From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Thursday, December 19th. I'm Abby Larico. The city of St. Louis recently hired a consultant to look into issues at the City Justice Center, where 18 detainees have died since 2020. But Reverend Darryl Gray, the chair of the city's Detention Facilities Oversight Board, isn't impressed.
I think if you were going to bring in a consultant with 18 deaths later, what is he going to find that we don't already know?
We'll have Gray's conversation with STL PR's Lacretia Wimbley coming up after this news on The Gateway. The question of who has the power to appoint a replacement for Wesley Bell as St. Louis County prosecutor is now in the hands of a judge. St. Louis Public Radio's Rachel Littman recaps Wednesday's hearing.
Both Governor Mike Parson and County Executive Sam Page say they have the authority to make the selection. Parson sued late last month when it became clear Page wasn't backing down. The question the judge has to weigh is essentially whether a prosecuting attorney is a state or a county office. Assistant Attorney General Andrew Crane says throughout history, the power to prosecute crimes has always belonged to the state.
The county can't pass laws, for example, that say we can overrule prosecutorial discretion.
Attorneys for the county say because prosecutors' power is limited to one county, they are local government officials and the county's charter prevails. A ruling is expected soon. I'm Rachel Littman, St. Louis Public Radio.
Missouri Governor-elect Mike Kehoe has selected a longtime state government employee to head up the Missouri Department of Social Services. Kehoe says he'll appoint Jessica Bax to lead the agency that oversees Medicaid, assistance to needy families, and investigations into child abuse. She's held leadership positions within the state's Department of Mental Health and the Department of Health and Senior Services. Bax will succeed Robert Nodell, who is departing from his post to become city manager of Poplar Bluff. Kehoe takes office in mid-January. Bax's nomination will need Missouri Senate confirmation. A North St. Louis hospital temporarily closed its doors Tuesday and furloughed most of its staff, citing a blood shortage. But as St. Louis Public Radio's Aula Kaziz reports, Homer G. Phillips Hospital is also facing financial issues.
The three-bed health center failed to pay dozens of healthcare employees last week. In an email sent to staff on Tuesday, the hospital's board of directors said they're working with lending partners to raise funds. Alderman Rasheen Eldridge represents Ward 14, where the hospital is located. He says it's shameful workers haven't been paid, but he's not surprised the hospital isn't functioning properly.
It goes to show another project that Palm Key touches just doesn't seem to be able to succeed. And this is why people in my community have been saying for the longest, we want this man out of our neighborhood.
McKee is the developer who built the hospital. He's been criticized for buying hundreds of parcels in North City and then letting them fall into despair. I'm Aula Kaziz, St. Louis Public Radio.
An Illinois lawmaker wants artificial intelligence to play a much smaller role in denying health care coverage. State Representative Bob Morgan's measure would require a human to, quote, meaningfully review any decision from an AI system that results in a denial, reduction, or termination in benefits. The Deerfield Democrat says there are ways AI can improve health care, but determining appropriate coverage isn't one of them.
There always should be a person reviewing a healthcare claim, and it should be a medical professional. If a doctor is saying this is what you need for your care, you shouldn't have a computer system standing in the way of that.
Morgan introduced the measure a couple of days before Thanksgiving, but there's very little time left to address this before lawmakers adjourn in January. Morgan thinks he'll introduce a new version to work on this spring. The Illinois task force studying warehouse safety after the deadly 2021 tornado in Edwardsville wrapped up its work Wednesday. St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer reports the family of one of the 6 people killed by the tornado says the final report, which includes requiring shelters, is a good start.
Len Cope, his wife, and daughter have attended all the task force meetings over the last 16 months. His 29-year-old son Clayton was one of the Amazon employees that died 3 years ago. Some task force members critiqued the final recommendations from the group as being watered down. While Cope says he understands that frustration, he appreciates the draft report.
We need to start somewhere, and I think this would be a great start. You have to get a foundation laid and then go from there.
The task force voted to require tornado shelters in warehouses and site-specific emergency response plans. Cope says he supports those measures, and he's looking forward to working with lawmakers to pass legislation. I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
advocates for reforming the St. Louis City Justice Center say they're concerned that the city hiring a consultant this month is just the latest turn in a carousel of several commissions that have failed to produce meaningful change at the city jail, where 18 detainees have died since 2020. St. Louis Public Radio's Lacretia Wimbley spoke with Reverend Darryl Gray. He's the chair of the Detention Facilities Oversight Board, which was created in 2021 to scrutinize jail conditions and hold its leaders accountable.
Thanks for joining me, Reverend Gray. How are you?
I'm living my best life. I'm just glad to be here.
It was only in April that you and other board members were allowed for the first time to meet with a detainee at the jail. How often have you or other members of the board met with detainees since?
Zero. The rationale or reason or excuse that we have been given is that we have to get permission from their lawyers in order to meet with them. We continue to ask for those meetings. We have yet to hear back from the CJC. We just remain hopeful.
Now, you met with Jail Commissioner Jennifer Clemens Abdullah on Wednesday last week after she returned from her nearly 3-month leave of absence. What did you discuss?
It was a very cordial, I would say 45-minute conversation where I asked her how she was doing. And I began to ask her, what can we do to work together? I said, all we want is to be able to do our job.
What was her response to that?
She said, beginning in January, I will make my COs available to your staff so that together you can begin to go through the complaints, the internal complaints and the external complaints. My jaw hit the ground because that's all we've been asking for the last 3 years, and we get it in a conversation on a sidewalk. Personally, I felt the strain that she must be under, having the responsibility of not only 750 plus detainees, but correctional officers and staff as well.
Sure. And so what are some of the qualities that you want to see demonstrated in her leadership?
Accountability is essential. You are responsible for the lives of everyone in this building. How are you doing your job? How are you making sure that people are safe? How are you making sure that people receive the type of health services that they require?
Mayor Tashara Jones's office announced last week that Doug Burris, the former acting director of the St. Louis County Jail, has contracted with the city to assess and recommend fixes at CJC. Now, Burris is credited for bringing improvements to the county jail after several detainees died in 2019. What message does the city's hiring of Doug Burris as a consultant send to you?
I think if you were going to bring in a consultant with 18 deaths later, what is he going to find that we don't already know? What is he going to say that we haven't already said? When we lost those 2 board members, why didn't we bring in a consultant then? When the protesters protested at the jail the first time, why didn't we bring a consultant then? And I know Doug, that's good people. The timing is questionable.
You are a longtime civil rights activist, and for more than 40 years, you fought for racial justice. Why is this volunteer work on the Oversight Board something that you continue to do, despite the struggles?
I mean, we've got some vulnerable people in our society, but there are 2,000 Black men in city and county jail right now. That's 2,000 Black families that are affected by this. There's a passage of scripture that I've tried to follow all of my life. Jesus said, when I was in prison, you visited me. Jesus said, when you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. I believe that all of us are called to live for the sake of others.
Your term on the Oversight Board expires on January 20th. Do you plan to keep serving?
If given the opportunity, I would do one more term for transition's sake.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Gray, for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
That was Reverend Darryl Gray, who's chair of the St. Louis Detention Facilities Oversight Board, speaking with St. Louis Public Radio's Lacretia Wimbley. Our Brian Moline edited that conversation. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri-St. Louis. Theme music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway.